want to encourage you, those of you who are interested in taking a look at it. I can actually leave one here, and you can paw through it and see if it interests you. There are about 150 photos of Srila Prabhupada in it. Some of them have never been seen before because they were old photos taken by my husband Gorsindor in 1967 and 68. They're black and white photos, but they have the essence of Srila Prabhupada's presence, and that's what's really needed in this day and age. So that's my main presentation for tonight. I guess I'll just see if there's questions. Any questions about the book? Do you have a question? I see. He's getting the microphone together.
Thank you very much for this book. Like any book about Srila Prabhupada, it's unique and very, very special because, as you said a little before when we talk, it's give other facet of a jewel of Srila Prabhupada. No? So it's very, very precious. And I just read in a book that, you said that Srila Prabhupada was a little bit upset when one of his disciples stated, this man will change the world. So this word man is kind of trigger like in Srila Prabhupada something when he said that it's very dangerous to see the guru as an ordinary man.
The acharya as the ordinary man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what he said. And the reason for that is because we need to understand what the word founder acharya means. This was actually introduced by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, a combination of Sanskrit and English, founder acharya. And I actually never really understood why Prabhupada was so adamant about putting founder acharya on books, founder acharya on plaques, everywhere. He was very adamant about this. I didn't know why, because I didn't understand the philosophy behind it. But not so long ago, I had a meeting with a young Indian lady in South Africa, because she was doing a review for my book. And she told me that their Shastraji, their Sanskrit Shastraji, explained that means, founder acharya means like Ramanuja or Nimbarka or Madhva. It means the actual root guru, the acharya from the whole lineage is coming down. The whole lineage of there are from time to time different religious principles and styles and methods introduced according to time and place and circumstance. Well, Srila Prabhupada introduced a whole system that really hadn't been introduced before. I mean, yes, it's old, it's coming from Madhva, and it's coming down for thousands of years, but he tweaked it in ways that were unique. Because he saw the Western culture, he saw what was needed, and because he's right in touch with Krishna, he was able to create something that would work for all over the world. And so that's what we have here. We have somebody from Jordan, we have somebody from Italy, we have somebody from Croatia, we have somebody from India, we have somebody from, I don't know where you're from, and from Germany, so many different international. That's what was important to him. He wasn't trying to make everybody come he never said, and he specifically said many times, Krishna is not just for the Indians. Although you are lucky that you have had Krishna from your childhood, and we're not as lucky as you, because you've been able to hear these stories from the time you're a little boy or a little girl. We haven't had that. We got to hear all this other stuff that's pretty much useless. But not all of it. I mean, the Jesus part was good, but we actually, we are benefiting from the unique contribution of Srila Prabhupada, and he is the root acharya in the same way that Nimbarka is, and that Madhva is, and so to call him a man, as if he's just a man who walked the earth, that's an offense. And that's something that he said early on. I mean, I didn't understand it. What did I know? I didn't know anything about Sanskrit or any of these things, but he made it very clear. There was one disciple who made an ad. This man has changed the world. Now, to me, it looked like a pretty good ad, but to Srila Prabhupada, he said, this is very dangerous. This is if the disciple considers the acharya to be a man, then his fall down is coming. So we have to consider that he is a saint who walked amongst us. He's a great personality that came from the spiritual world. He's not one of us. And I was able to see that early on because I was with him all the time. And even, I know Shamsundar wrote in his book, he never once saw him sleep. He traveled the world, and I mean, I traveled from America to Switzerland, and my whole schedule is off, It's even worse if I travel from India to America. It takes me a week to get my days and nights sorted out. I'm up all night for the first week. And so Prabhupada never had any of that. He just kept his own schedule going, and this would just amaze his servants who traveled with him. Of course, what can I say? There are so many incidences. There's so many mystical experiences. There's no end to it. And just the fact that he actually circled the globe 12 times, he came to America with only, $7 in rupees, and you can't spend rupees in America. Essentially, he came to America with nothing. 40 rupees, I think he had. And in that time, that was about $7, but you can't spend rupees in America. So essentially, he came with nothing, but a mission. And he struggled the first year, and then he had a handful of young boys and girls join and support his efforts. But he always knew, like I've told, he had the globe that he would look at, and there's a picture of that in here in this little book, a picture of him turning the globe and looking at the various countries of the world and saying, Brahmananda, you shall go to Russia. Gorsundar, you shall go to Japan. I mean, he was already planning when we were just practically children. Most of us were between 18 and 20, I would say. There were a couple of real old ones, like Rupanuka. He was 26, heaven forbid, very old. But there was really no, we had no idea. We had no idea. I had no idea that I would be, years later, seeing huge temples being built all over the world with Srila Prabhupada's murti, with beautiful deities. And I mean, we really didn't know, but he knew. In fact, there was someone who, I think it was an astrologer or someone he talked to early on, I can't remember exactly, but he told someone, I have many temples and many disciples, but I'm simply separated by time at this time. In other words, they haven't happened yet. Because, we have talked about the fact that he is Trikalagyan. Trikalagyan means can see the present, the future, and the past. Of course, you can go to a different level. I was just reading something that ultimately it's all kind of a dream in the material world, but we're pretty much caught up in this dream. And so we can't really quite see it like that. We have to consider that he is able to foresee what will be good for us and what we should do. And that's one of the reasons, one of the things I've been talking about a lot in the classes that I've been giving at this beautiful little temple, is that we need to be prepared for the golden age, because the golden age is right around the corner. But there might be a few problems in between now and that corner. I mean, like things that are changing the world right before our eyes. But we can be assured that this beautiful, handsome Lord Nrsingadev, sitting right by the Czech border, and in Eastern Europe, which is where we are. We're in Eastern Germany, which used to be Eastern Europe, right? Didn't it used to be East? Okay, was this part behind the Iron Curtain or not?
No, the south.
This part wasn't.
In the south.
It was in the south that it was.
We are in the south.
But we're very near to where the Iron Curtain was, aren't we?
Yes.
So where was the? Well, Czechoslovakia was behind the Iron Curtain, wasn't it? And we're 2 hours from Czech, aren't we? How far is the Czech border from here?
5 minutes, 10 minutes.
10 minutes.
How many?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? You're kidding. 10 minutes? We're 10 minutes from the Czech border that used to be... Actually, my godbrother Gorkesheva, who installed the deity here, told me many, many years ago, I had wanted to come see this deity for many years, but I guess I wasn't qualified till now, and I got lucky. And so he told me that at that time, that this Nrsingadev deity was installed in the forest, and that it was kind of hidden, and that he was facing off communism. So I don't know, is he facing the border, or is he facing, which way is he facing? I don't know. Is he? Does anyone know?
I think it's not facing the border.
Which way is he facing?
Because the border must be here.
No, the opposite side.
Facing south.
Facing the south.
Yeah, we call in India is Dakshinamurti. Like the god will always face towards the Dakshinam, like south.
Is facing southeast.
So,
Oh, I thought the deity faced east.
mostly the powerful gods like what I can say, like half human and half because
This particular deity faces south.
So the powerful gods will be in the direction of Dakshinamurti. Like Dakshinam is the most powerful place.
Huh.
Like the gods will be facing in the direction. Like who are more powerful, they have to be facing this direction.
So it's according to the deity then, which way he faces. And this particular, the lion, half...
No, here because it was arranged, because here's Radha Mada Mohan behind, was before. Radha Mada Mohan was here.
Ah,
They were facing east.
I see.
And the Nrsingadev is facing
South.
east. But there was no particular reason, I think it was just practical face.
Oh, I think there
He
was...
said it's not-
Knowing Gorkesheva, I'm sure there was a practical reason. I'm sure there was a shot.
How he hears the lecture maybe, he knows. Akila,
Ha.
he will come, now he will tell us.
Oh, I see. Anyway, so I lost my train of thought now. So that's what happens when you get old. So,
Iron Curtain, check about it.
huh?
You were speaking about the Iron Card. The Iron Card.
About what?
The Iron Curtain.
Oh, the Iron Curtain. Yeah. Well, we don't have that anymore, do we?
No.
Maybe he has something to do with that, or something to do with that. That could be.
You were speaking that you couldn't imagine that like the moment that Srila Prabhupada started, that will be like having like temples all around the world.
No, we had no idea. None of it. I mean, none of us had any idea that this was going to happen. We were just we were mesmerized by Srila Prabhupada. I have to admit, we were mesmerized. We were just so much in love with him that it didn't matter if he told us the sky was striped in pink and blue and purple with polka dots. We would have said, "Oh, Yeah. It was like that. It was love. It was pure love. And he was so confident also. That's the thing. His faith and his confidence were so powerful that you suddenly felt confident that he was absolutely right. It was unshakable. His confidence that this movement will spread all over the world, and that this is the answer for Kali Yuga. Because, I mean, most of us could see there was a serious problem. At that time, there was a similar situation in the world that we have now. There was war, there was social unrest, there was insanity. Yeah, I mean, it was pretty bad, actually, at that time in America. There was even one incident where I wasn't aware of it, but I was aware of it since then, that the military opened up fire on a bunch of students at a college and actually killed some of them. You know, it was a crazy, crazy time in the world. And we're kind of in a similar time now with the kind of things that are happening in the world. You're probably not aware of what just happened in Maui, but they just burned a whole town down, including the people. And it's a very intense time, and Srila Prabhupada told us it was coming. He told us many ways, many times, within 50 years, he told us. And so it's about 50 years now. It's been about 50 years. I have one godbrother who was walking with him above the city of Atlanta. That's in America. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. And Prabhupada pointed his cane at the city and said, "You see that city over there?" And my godbrother, Mahabodhi, his name, he said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, that city is Atlanta." And Prabhupada said, "Yes, that city will be gone within 50 years. And then it will be gone because of the looting and the violence and the rioting." And so Mahabodhi said, "Yes, Srila Prabhupada, I've read that later on in Kali Yuga, there will be all these things." He said, Prabhupada said, "The people will have to flee to the hills because of the looting and the violence." And then Mahabodhi said, "Yes, because I understand later on in Kali Yuga things get really, really bad." And then Prabhupada says, "No, not later on, within your lifetime." And he's still alive, by the way, and he's about in his 70s. So this sort of thing is happening a lot in the U.S. I don't think it's happening everywhere, but it is happening there. And you have to go? I hope I didn't say anything to offend you or anything like that. I see. Well, you look like you're coming from South India, I think.
Yeah.
Which part?
Tirupati, like Lord Balaji.
Balaji.
Yeah.
He's my second love to learn Nrsimhadev. I used to spend many weeks up on the hill.
Oh, okay.
Back in the 80s, that was my favorite place to go because it's Vaikuntha, you know.
Yeah.
And I would rent a cabin by a lake, and then now you can't do it anymore. Now you cannot pay for all the. It's booked now.
Right now they're like facilitating, like you have to pay in euros, maybe 100 euros. Then you can have a quick darshanam. So everything is a commercial thing right now.
Yeah, but back then you could go to all of them. You could go at the Tomala Seva, you could go early in the morning, you could circumambulate with the musk. You can't do that anymore because it's booked for 40 years in advance. But back then it was very easy. All I had to do was sign a paper saying that I was a legitimate Hindu and pay some money, and that was my idea of a vacation. I used to spend 3 weeks up on the hill.
For Suprabhat Seva, you have to wait 3 years right now.
It what?
To have a Suprabhat Seva, at least we have to pre-book 3 years earlier.
Yeah. How long do you have to pre-book?
Maybe 3 years. I'm waiting for past 2 years to book
Yeah.
the ticket.
Yeah, the Tomala Seva and the I don't know what it's called, but you go there at 3 in the morning, they give you a kalash, and they have something down in there, and then everybody circumambulates the temple, the inner sanctum, and then you go in, and then you sit down, and And so it's Om Namo Narayanaya. You know, the Brahmins are carrying the big vessels of milk, the big silver vessels of milk, this big, and they're going back and forth and bathing the Lord. I would go to all of the sevas back then. It was a wonderful time. It was a wonderful time. And then I became more attached to Vrindavan later on. But you're very fortunate to be coming from that place.
Yeah.
From down Tirupati or up Tirupati?
Down Tirupati. Like,
Tirumala?
it is the upper one is called as Tirumala and the down one is called as Tirupati.
Should you have to speak louder?
Yeah, the temple, the hill station is called Tirumala
Ah,
and the downstairs, like the city part is called as Tirupati.
I see.
So it is called as TTD.
Right.
Tirupati Tirumala Devasthan.
Yes, they run it very... Actually, Prabhupada went there, you know that? Our Guru Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he went to Tirupati. And he admired the way that they were running it very, very efficiently. The TTD runs everything very efficiently, you know. And the amazing thing about going to Tirupati, you don't want to go there with any jewelry on, because you won't leave with it on. Something just comes over you that you have to take off your earrings. You have to take off any earring. Just, do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's a story, a leela, that it's paying the Lord's wedding debt.
And most of us, we offer our hair to the God.
Yeah, I cut my hair there once too, yeah.
Complete hair we will offer. Like we used to do each and every year till when I'm 10 or 15 years old, we used to each and every year. We'll go and offer our hair to God.
You come from a very, very fortunate birth, much more fortunate than mine. Thank you so much for coming.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Please come again.
Yeah, sure. We are going to stay here. So we are going tomorrow morning.
Oh, you're going to stay for the weekend, or for a couple of days.
Yeah. Yeah, one day.
Where do you live?
We live in Boisenburg, which is near Nuremberg.
In Germany.
In Germany. Right?
So you're working in Germany?
Yeah, I was an engineer and my wife is a doctor.
You're a tech engineer,
Yeah.
and she's doctor.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming.
And thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Got a question?
Yes, I would like to know how was the movement successful in communist countries? You know,
Very successful. Because the people are starving. They're starving. They were starving for God. Yeah, very successful. It still is. It still is. Russia is I mean, sure, they've been through some very difficult times in Russia. You don't know the story, but Prabhupada went to Russia with only a 5-day visa, and he told Shamsundar, they were lucky to get this 5-day visa. I mean, it was impossible for an American to go to Russia at that time. But Srila Prabhupada's secretary, Shamsundar, was American. Somehow or other, because Prabhupada had written, I think it was Professor Kotovsky. Was that his name? Kotovsky. He did some Hindu studies or something like that. So on that premise, to go and meet with this Dr. Kotovsky to talk about something to do with Hindu studies, or it was really a ruse, really. But he got a 5-day visa, and when Shamsundar told Srila Prabhupada, that's all I could get was a 5 days, Prabhupada said, well, that's all the time I need. And when he went there, do you know that he met one Russian boy named Ananta Shanti? Well, he wasn't named, his name was Anatoly or something like that. And he came to Prabhupada's hotel, and Srila Prabhupada spent 2 or 3 days with him, initiated him, and more importantly, he empowered him. He empowered him so that he could preach. And he preached all over Russia. He became very well known, and unfortunately he was spent 6 years in prison, of being tortured with the needles, with the shots. He was a great yogi. I mean, I could just say, thank you, Krishna, that you didn't give me such a hard job to do, but he did a very good job. I met him later on in Vrindavan. I actually knew him years later. He suffered a lot of physical and mental distress from the torture that he underwent. But he was still very much a devotee, and he passed away a couple of years ago. Anyway, he opened up Russia completely, and then of course many of my godbrothers went undercover and brought books in. And there is one story which happened while I was in Hawaii, and that is, Srila Prabhupada, we didn't know how we were going to get books in. We didn't know how we were going to get information in. So he selected one French girl named Mandakini. Mandakini?
She was here last year.
Huh?
She was here last year.
Oh, she was here? Yes.
Last year with Valmiki Prabhu.
Mandakini, she was a pujari, and I didn't know this, but I read recently that she had actually prayed for some kind of special mission that would, something that would be very pleasing to Srila Prabhupada. So he selected her, he handpicked her to go and marry this Russian young man, sight unseen, which is, most Westerners wouldn't go for that. Most Western girls wouldn't do that. But she immediately agreed, and it so happened that I was in the car with Srila Prabhupada in Hawaii when the letter came from her saying that she was agreeing to go. And I took a photograph. I was in the back seat of the car, and Shamsundar was reading the letter to Prabhupada. And just at that moment, I took a picture, and I don't think there is a bigger smile anywhere. It's like the most, he is just absolutely overjoyed because he knows that he can get information in, books in. And so that's kind of how Russia started. And then there was a lot of abuses. So there's a book written, it's called Salted Bread. Salted Bread is written by some of the devotees there. I read it some years ago. And I've known some of the devotees there too. I remember there was one named Valmiki, and Valmiki was a part of a rock band of some sort. And he married an American girl, so he had the ability to come and go. And he told me, I was in Los Angeles, I remember, we were sitting outside the Los Angeles temple, and he was just saying, you have no idea. I mean, this is amazing. You can chant, you could sing out loud, you could play kartals. We have to go very much in the closet and quietly, very quietly sing. Because, to keep from getting in trouble. And then I used to do classes for the Russians in Vrindavan. Even I did 7 years ago when I went to India, one class for the Russians. But this is like 20 years ago with a translator. And it would usually take maybe 4 hours because we would translate, would take so much time. And I remember there was one KGB man in my class, and he had a fascinating story. I think his name was Amrita. I'm sure the Russians would know. How he was given, this book that I've been saying we need to learn to sing, the Ishopanishad. He was given a copy of this Ishopanishad in English, and it was kept under lock and key. It was considered very dangerous, and he is a KGB man, so he was trustworthy to keep this dangerous book. And so, but something about the book just got his attention, and so he got an English and Russian dictionary, and he would go to the forest and he would be translating this and reading it. And so he was taking leave from his KGB job, and his wife was getting worried about him, so she arranged for him to see a psychiatrist also, because if you're not in touch with, you have to stay in sync with the party, And so she was worried about him. But he was describing how he made a trick, that he did something to the television, and then he put the book there, and so that she had to go bow down before the book, something like that. long story short, they both became devotees eventually, and this is many years ago, but his son, the Russian son, was married to a French devotee. They were living in Vrindavan. So, yes, I would say that the preaching work in the communist countries was very, very successful, and it continues to be. Because the people, there's several reasons. Part of it is that the nature of the soul wants God. They want truth. They want freedom. And when you're denied it, it's just like if you're a hungry man. You know, you really go for it whenever the food comes. So, and also there is another factor, and that is that the Russia is the rishis from above the Himalayas, you know, the Himalaya mountains where the sages and so forth. The descendants of the rishis are there, and so they've done. There's fire sacrifices and punya, and you know that sukriti goes from birth after birth. It goes from into the family. And so Prabhupada knew that there were very receptive people in Russia. So he was very determined. And also there's Poland, and also there's Croatia, and there's so many countries that the eastern region, so much preaching is going on there. And now they've got, in all the languages, right? Practically every language. I mean, even the most languages I've never even... Where's Belarus? Where's Belarus?
Between Poland and Russia.
They just gave I just saw they're doing an evacuation there. Anybody know why?
They gave a what?
Evacuation.
Oh, why?
I don't know, I'm asking. The Americans, get out of there right now. That kind of a, yeah.
Because there's the risk of war outbreak.
More war outbreak, yeah. So anyway, does that answer your question? It does, yeah. Many devotees we have are from, she's from Croatia. Many devotees we have are from Russia or from other places. I personally, I would really like to, I always wanted to go to Russia, but now I don't think American citizens can get into Russia. No.
I have another question. What's the relationship between Vaishnavism and Islam?
Not a very good one, unfortunately. But actually, Prabhupada, nowadays, not a very good one. At one time, Prabhupada says that the Muslim community and the Vaishnava community got along fine, but the British, when they left India, he said the parting blow, parting kick, is the way he put it, was this partition. And it caused so much suffering, created this, they created a lot of this, a lot of the times that's what politicians do, they create divisions between people. But Prabhupada said when he was young, in Calcutta, there was the Muslim community and the Hindu community got along just fine. You know, they were just like brothers and sisters. But now it's different. It's been very different because of what the way the British. They drew a line through India, and then there was partition, and I'm sure you know about all the violence in Pakistan and India. Before, they were all one country, but now so much problem has. They're almost on the verge of war all the time. What is it called? The Wagah border? Is that what it's called? The Wagah? Indians would know. The Wagah border, the border between Pakistan and India. There's constant conflict there now. Just like with China also, between India and China. It's not a peaceful time, let's put it that way. Yes, Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna. 2 days ago, Anotara Mataji was sitting on your left, she shared a video about Prabhupada memories. It's called Following Prabhupada. I don't know if you are familiar with this series of videos. Probably you are. And you were mentioning the story, how, or when Prabhupada started writing or translating the Chaitanya Charitamrita. And I was wondering what was the the bridge point between Srimad Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, because we all know that Srimad Bhagavatam was the life work of Srila Prabhupada, and he spent technically his last breath while translating or writing his commentaries on the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he could not finish it on time. You hear me clearly?
I'm not sure I understand your question. It's
Yeah.
a very complicated one. Come a little closer.
No, it's not complicated. I'm just I'm talking a lot. Sorry. So, I was always wondering, because Srila Prabhupada was so much dedicated into translating the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he could have finished it, but at some point he stopped. I think I always thought he stopped after the 4th canto, but you said he stopped after the 2nd canto, and finished the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita.
He stopped on the 10th canto. He did part of the 10th canto.
He paused, better said. He paused after certain canto, the 2nd or the 4th canto, and then translated the whole Chaitanya Charitamrita.
Yeah, that's
and then
true.
went back to the Srimad Bhagavatam, and he was not able to finish it all.
So what's the question? I don't understand.
What's Prabhupada's point of view on the importance of Chaitanya Charitamrita? Because it was obvious for me that Srimad Bhagavatam is more important, but obviously he paused the Srimad Bhagavatam in order to finish Chaitanya Charitamrita, because he saw you, or mainly said his disciples, they were very interested in Chaitanya Charitamrita. So he finished the Chaitanya Charitamrita and then went back to Srimad Bhagavatam. So can you say something, what was Prabhupada's perspective on these two books, and which is more important? Or
I never thought of it like that before, but you're right. But I never considered that, but you're right. He did, but he didn't pause Srimad Bhagavatam. He continued doing Srimad Bhagavatam, but he did complete Chaitanya Charitamrita, 17 volumes, and he was very adamant about finishing it. That was the big push that we had in Los Angeles. He wanted the whole thing done in 2 months or something. It was impossible. And when the devotee said it's impossible, he said that's a word in a fool's dictionary. Impossible doesn't exist. Anyway, I never thought of it that way. Srimad Bhagavatam is very important, there's no question, and he continued right up until the time that he left this world. Even whenever he was in Vrindavan lying flat on his back, he was still whispering and he was speaking Srimad Bhagavatam. But he went up to the 10th canto and to the cowherd boy stories, but he didn't go into the more esoteric Radha Krishna Leelas, which I kind of thought that.
do you think that was on purpose, like that was his plan?
I don't know. I always had the idea that he wouldn't leave this world until Bhagavatam was finished. And it was a big shock to me at the time when he did leave, because Bhagavatam wasn't finished. I really thought he would finish it. I was surprised. I was very surprised, actually. But I never thought of it that way, but he did actually complete Chaitanya Charitamrita. Well, I love Srimad Bhagavatam. I love it. I love every bit of it. But one thing that I have realized from my own realization, which is about this big, don't take it too seriously, is that when Krishna came to this world, many people did not even accept him. And the mercy that he gave, he had weapons. And he used them sometimes too, Shishupal. But Lord Chaitanya, we're in Kali Yuga, and we're at a very difficult time. And Lord Chaitanya came with no weapons. He's the only Krishna avatar with no weapons. Look at all the weapons that Nrsimhadev has. He's well equipped. And, you know, all of the avatars, they all have weapons. But Lord Chaitanya's weapon is the holy name. And that weapon is the only weapon that will subdue the darkness of Kali Yuga, bring light to Kali Yuga. So I don't know, I never thought about this, I never really discussed it with Srila Prabhupada, but Chaitanya Charitamrita and Gaur Nitai, he wanted Gaur Nitai in every home. He wanted millions of Gaur Nitai deities. He asked me to make Gaur Nitai and put them, you know, I was trying to make them, but I couldn't really do it very well. This is before we had access to India, you have to understand. We didn't have access to buying deities. Now you can buy all the deities you want from India, but back then we couldn't. We didn't have that access yet. So he wanted Gaur Nitai somehow or other. He put Radha Krishna in some temples, but he was much more concerned with the worship of Gaur Nitai, because the people in this age, meaning us, can't really worship Radha Krishna very well. We can't really... And Jagannath is also considered very, very merciful. You know, the Orissa, a lot of the people are fish eaters, you know, and it's a very... he's considered extremely merciful. So he was actually he's going to bed now. Hare Krishna. Jai Lord Nrsimhadev. I tell you, this deity, anyone who hasn't seen him in this lifetime should come and see him. That's what I have to say. He's really wonderful. He's so powerful. I feel like it's like we're in a South Indian temple in the middle of the Bavarian forest here. You know, isn't it? I mean, everything about it is like a South Indian temple, which I loved South India. I spent so much time in Tirupati and Tirumala and Kanyakumari, all this, especially Tamil Nadu. They have so many temples in Tamil Nadu. And this is just like a South Indian temple, but you walk outside and everybody's speaking German. So I hadn't thought of that, but you're right. He didn't pause Bhagavatam, though. He continued working on Bhagavatam, but it's longer and more. There's more of it. So he didn't finish it. But Chaitanya Charitamrita is, the pastimes of Lord Chaitanya are very, very important, very, very significant, because he is the most merciful. That prayer we say, Namo Mahabhadanaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namani Gaur, we say Namah. He is the most merciful incarnation. And Lord Nityananda, he's even more merciful. So I've come to realize, you know, in my old age, that worshipping Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, Lord Nityananda is our only hope. That's how I feel. That's my perspective, because they're so kind and so merciful, and they're giving it freely. They're giving love of God freely. And it washed over the whole world and into the Renaissance in Italy and Europe, and just that feeling of bhav, love. So that's what we chant, Sri Krishna Chaitanya. This is why we worship Gaur Nitai as Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Lord Nrsimhadev being here was a special benediction for Europe because of the communist danger, you might say. And that danger hasn't gone away. It's still there, you know. So he's here.
Yes, it's here, on the other side.
Yeah, exactly. Any more questions?
And there was also, at the same time, the discovery of America in 1914, when Gora Nitai, when Gora Lord Trinidad was still young, he discovered America. Spanish people. Columbus.
Oh, I forgot about him. I thought Columbus was a Britisher.
No, he was Spanish.
Oh, really?
Italian.
Oh, you see how good I was at history? I really didn't care about it. So, yeah, I know 1492. That part I remember, but the guy's named Columbus. He wasn't English. He was Spanish.
No, Italian.
Was Spanish.
Oh, he's Italian?
Somebody says was Italian.
He was originally Italian, but then he went to America to the Queen of Spain.
Oh, I see. Okay. Whatever.
He worked for the Spanish.
Yes.
They were looking for colonies. They're still doing that, I guess. No, I mean, it's a very different world than we had even at the time of Lord Chaitanya, isn't it? It's a very different world. We didn't have 747 jets then. And so people were confined more or less to their continents. Now they've got them all mixed up and they're fighting like anything. Anyway, we can't look too much at what's going on in the world, but we have to be aware that Lord Chaitanya, this is his time. This is like I was saying in a class the other day that I took a calculator once and calculated how long ago Lord Chaitanya came by demigod time. Demigod time is much longer, and it was less than a second ago. So we're actually in the wake of the boat right now, the big boat that just went through the water. Meaning, every boats have a wake that goes behind them. They're like the water. Lord Chaitanya came 500 years ago. Then Prabhupada just came. So there's a huge resurgence right now of God consciousness. And I understand we had some nice talks about the Christianity. I mean, Jesus also was teaching a very similar path, the path of grace. There's two basic paths. There's the path of rules and regulations and the path of grace. In India, it's called Maryada. Maryada is the path of rules and regulations, and Pushti, or grace, is considered the path of... And so Lord Chaitanya taught really the path of grace, and so did Jesus Christ. He was opposed to the just rules and regulation thing. He was talking about love of God. And he was also opposed to just works, karma, that you need to do something more than that. So there's a lot of similarities. I know Dr. Kapoor wrote a very nice article in a Back to God many years ago talking about how Dr. Kapoor was one of Prabhupada's godbrothers. He was talking about how Christianity and Vaishnavism are like they're sister religions. Maybe not the trappings exactly, although I read recently that originally in the Catholic Church they had tulsi plants, or basil, yeah, and it was on the altar. So there's some remnants of things coming down. And then, as we all know, the way the Sabbath came about was because of Lord Nrsingadev in the court of Brahma. Shani, the god of Saturn, the Saturn's day, he offered prayers to Lord Nrsingadev, and Lord Nrsingadev said, "I'll give you a boon," and the boon that he asked for was that let Saturday be be your special day. Make it like God's day. And so this comes down, this Sabbath is coming down from who knows how many kalpas as being the holy day, the day when you worship God. Primarily you worship God. So there's so many things like that are links, but time has a way of diluting things and getting lost. Like Krishna says in the Gita that I gave this very confidential information to the sun god a long time ago, eons ago, but in the course of time it got lost. So this is what happens. This is the material world. As soon as the teacher leaves, as soon as the avatar leaves, as soon as Krishna leaves, the Rakshasas get very busy trying to make it obscure the path, because that's what they like to do. They make it materialistic, they turn it into a religion, they turn it into a money-making thing. You were just telling me about that the other day, which I found very interesting, how Protestantism came about, because they were, for money you can get rid of your karma.
Indulgences.
What is it called?
They were selling indulgences.
Indulgences.
It's like a certificate that the church removed all of your sins. And
For a certain amount of money.
Yeah, and then according to what you were paying, then there were like certain sins that they were, canceling. So it was a very successful
Money making.
Yes.
Yes, yeah. And until the Protestants came along and blew a hole in it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, these things go on because it's the material world. They go on always because there's so many. And even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta has talked about how that when you try to contain the essence of bhakti into an organized, structured religion, you're going to lose a lot of it. And so that is a challenge. But at the same time, you need religion for the lay people and for the children. It's also necessary. Otherwise, if people grow up without any structure, I mean, we went to Sunday school every Sunday. I don't know what you guys had, but I'm sure you had something. Oh, my Tirupati friends are back. And so you must have had some kind of structured religious training as a child, huh? Yeah. And so did the Christians. And so there is a need for institutionalized religion because it's necessary for the lay people. Not everybody's going to make it the topmost thing of their life. And it's also necessary for children to grow up into some kind of a structure. So even though a lot of us don't relate to some of the institutionalization, and we see the flaws in it, there is a necessity for it, and that's why it keeps happening. And we have different religions that come about, and then but when the great personality comes, because they get a little bit off base, they become a little bit too far into materialism, which is kind of what happened with Catholicism. Then somebody comes and tries to bring it back to a more spiritual pursuit, which is what kind of happened. So now what we have is we have temples all over the world, and things aren't perfect. Institutions are never perfect. There's always problems. Anytime you get more than one person in a room, you're going to have politics. But still, the overriding factor is that it's better than not having it. It's better all you have to do is look around at all these children here who are benefiting from this, as well as the adults. Anyway, I'm just rambling. So what was your question?
I don't know. I don't know how to ask a question, but I think...
It was the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and what was Prabhupada's point on that?
And then the topic changed. But it's okay, I was satisfied.
And the Shingadev closed the altar and then the topic changed.
Yeah.
Len Nrsingadev went to sleep, or maybe he's having his milk, I'm not sure. But he attracted our attention.
Yeah. But it's okay, I'm satisfied. And it's also 8:30, we don't have to go so long unless you desire so.
Well, I never thought of it from that perspective before, but you're right, you're right. And then also he stopped and did Nectar of Devotion too. I guess he felt, I can't speculate on why these things happen, I'm just, a little bitty creature. But you're right, he didn't. And then on the other hand, maybe he didn't feel, sometimes I think, that the more esoteric parts of Srimad Bhagavatam, the Ras Panchadhyaya, we aren't ready for them. That's what I think. I mean, I personally become very uncomfortable.
I mean, he gave us Krishna book also.
Huh?
He gave us Krishna book at the beginning, Srila Prabhupada.
He gave us Krishna book, that's true. So that is kind of like his 10th canto and onward. So, in fact, you can buy, they're very beautiful, I have to show them to you, a whole set of Srila Prabhupada's books, original ones, with Krishna book, but not with any, all of which was translated by him, not anybody else. And so the Krishna book is sort of like 10th canto. I mean, he talks about various things in it. So anyway, any more questions? So is it time to close and have our warm milk?
Yes.
Our hot milk from the cows next door?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to the wonderful devotees that come here.
Govinda Mataji ki jai.
And if anyone is interested in buying a book, they're for sale. I have 4 boxes of them right now.